What if the very thing you believe is protecting you, your constant worry, your endless planning, your desperate need to control every outcome, is actually the invisible wall blocking everything you truly desire? What if all those sleepless nights spent rehearsing problems that never happened have been pushing peace further and further away from your heart? Here is a truth that may surprise you. Peace has been waiting for you all along. It never left. It has been patiently waiting for you to simply stop struggling against life's natural current. Today, we explore one of Buddhism's most powerful and transformative teachings, the sacred art of letting go and trusting in life's wisdom. So take a slow, gentle breath. Allow your shoulders to soften. And let us walk this healing path together. Part 1, The Buddhist Story, The Monk and the River Stone. An ancient tale of releasing burdens and finding freedom. In the mountains of ancient China, surrounded by pine forests and flowing streams, there stood a monastery famous for producing peaceful and wise monks. Students came from distant provinces hoping to study there, and villagers spoke of the place with deep reverence. Among its many students was a young man named Wei Lin. From the outside, Wei Lin seemed like the perfect disciple. He woke before dawn when stars still decorated the dark sky. He sat in meditation for hours while others slept soundly. He memorized sutras with precision that impressed even the most senior teachers. His robes were always neat and clean. His manners were always humble and respectful. Villagers who visited the temple often remarked, "This young man will surely become a great master someday. His dedication is truly inspiring." But the elder monks noticed something troubling beneath the surface. Despite all his devoted practice, Wei Lin's eyes held no genuine peace. His shoulders curved forward as though carrying an invisible weight that grew heavier each passing month. His rare smiles never reached his eyes. A shadow lived behind his gaze, a deep darkness that no amount of prayer or meditation seemed to touch. Something was deeply wrong with this promising young monk. You see, Wei Lin had not entered the monastery seeking spiritual awakening. He came seeking escape from a past that haunted him relentlessly. 7 years before taking his monastic vows, Wei Lin had been the eldest son of a humble farming family. They owned a small plot of land at the foot of the mountains, just enough to grow rice and vegetables, just enough to live simply and happily together. His father worked the fields with calloused, weathered hands. His mother filled their modest home with warmth and delicious aromas. His younger sister, only 8 years old, spent her days chasing butterflies and singing songs in the courtyard. Life was modest but complete. They possessed little wealth, but they had each other. And that was more than enough. Then, on a terrible afternoon, everything shattered. A wealthy landlord arrived with soldiers and official documents. He claimed the family owed ancient debts, debts they had never heard of, debts that seemed to appear from nowhere. The documents looked authentic. The soldiers looked impatient and threatening. Within mere hours, everything was gone. The farm, the home, the animals, their entire life, stripped away without mercy. Wei Lin's father, a proud man who had never begged for anything, could not bear the crushing shame. He stopped eating. He stopped speaking. Within 3 months, his health failed. He died that bitter winter, when the ground was frozen too hard to dig a proper grave. His mother, utterly lost without her husband, faded like a flower without sunlight. She followed him in death before spring arrived. Distant relatives took his younger sister to another province. Wei Lin walked her to the cart that would carry her away forever. She clung to his hand, crying, asking why this terrible thing was happening. He had no answers. He watched the cart disappear down the dusty road until it became a speck on the horizon. He never saw her again. And Wei Lin blamed himself with merciless intensity. He was the eldest son, the protector of the family. He should have been smarter. He should have questioned those documents. He should have found a way, any way, to save them. This guilt became his constant, faithful companion. It followed him into the monastery. It sat beside him during every meditation. It whispered cruel accusations in the dark hours of the night. You failed them completely. You could have done more. Their deaths are your fault. No amount of prayer silenced these relentless voices. No amount of practice brought lasting relief. Until one golden autumn afternoon, when everything began to change. The head abbot, Master Huiming, 93 years old with eyes full of ancient wisdom, invited Wei Lin for a walk. They followed a winding path through forests painted with gold and crimson leaves. The air smelled of pine and approaching rain. They walked in comfortable silence for nearly an hour until they reached a wide, clear river flowing peacefully toward the distant sea. On the riverbank lay stones of various sizes, each one smoothed by centuries of patient water. Master Huiming pointed to a large, dark stone, perhaps 30 pounds. "Pick it up," he said simply. Wei Lin obeyed without question. The stone was heavy but manageable. "Now hold it straight out in front of you. Arms extended. Do not bend your elbows." Wei Lin did as instructed, curious about the lesson. The first minute was uncomfortable but bearable. By the 5th minute, his arms trembled noticeably. By the 10th minute, his entire body shook violently. Sweat poured down his face. Every muscle screamed for immediate relief. "Master," he gasped through clenched teeth, "I cannot hold it any longer. Please." The old teacher's voice was soft as falling leaves. "Then set it down, child." Wei Lin released the stone. It thudded against the earth. Immediately, in that very instant, sweet relief flooded through his entire being. He stood there panting, marveling at how extraordinarily good it felt to simply let go. Master Huiming waited patiently for his breathing to settle, then spoke. "Tell me, was the stone heavy when you first lifted it?" "It was noticeable, Master. But quite manageable." "And at the end?" "Completely unbearable." "Did the stone itself change during those 10 minutes?" Wei Lin paused thoughtfully. "No, Master. The stone remained the same." "So what changed?" Understanding dawned like morning light breaking through clouds. "The time, Master. The longer I held it, the heavier it seemed to become." Master Huiming nodded slowly, his eyes filled with compassion. "This is precisely the nature of worry, my son. This is the nature of guilt, of regret, of fear. A thought held for a moment is just a thought, light as a feather, passing like a cloud. But a thought held for 7 years becomes a crushing boulder that destroys the spirit." He placed a gentle hand on Wei Lin's shoulder. "The stone was never your enemy. Your refusal to set it down was your true enemy. The past cannot be changed by any power. Your parents have found their peace. But you remain in chains, not because they are locked, but because you will not open your hands and let them fall. Wei Lin stood by that river long after his teacher departed. The water flowed endlessly before him, never grasping at the rocks, never clinging to the leaves that fell upon its surface, simply moving with life's eternal current. Something deep within him began to shift. It did not happen all at once. True healing rarely does. But a small crack formed in the wall around his heart. A crack through which light could finally enter after 7 dark years. Over the following months, Wei Lin practiced a new discipline, the discipline of releasing. Each time guilt arose, he would pause, breathe, and gently set down the stone. Again and again and again. Some days, he picked it right back up almost immediately. Old habits resist change stubbornly. That was acceptable. He simply practiced again. But gradually, the periods of peace grew longer. The stone felt lighter. And one morning, as golden sunlight rose over the mountain peaks, Wei Lin realized with quiet astonishment, the weight was completely gone. Not because the past had changed, but because he had finally stopped carrying it. The Buddha said, "In the end, these things matter most. How well did you love? How fully did you live? How deeply did you let go?" Part 2, a modern story, Margaret's Awakening. How one woman found peace by releasing control. Now, let us travel from ancient China to present-day Ohio, where a different person faced a remarkably similar struggle. Margaret Thompson was 74 years old. A retired schoolteacher who had dedicated 38 years to shaping young minds. A widow for 8 years since cancer claimed her beloved husband, Robert. A devoted mother of 3 grown children. A proud grandmother of 5 energetic grandchildren who called her Grammy. By all external measures, Margaret's life was a success story. But inside, where no one could see, she was slowly drowning. Drowning in constant, exhausting worry. She worried endlessly about her eldest son, David, who worked 70 demanding hours a week at a law firm. He never called anymore. When he did manage to phone, he sounded exhausted, irritable, and distant. She worried his success was slowly destroying him from the inside. She worried constantly about her daughter, Karen, whose marriage had been going through a rough patch for 18 long months with no improvement in sight. Karen's voice grew more strained with each conversation. She worried about her youngest, Michael, who at 46 still drifted aimlessly from job to job, relationship to relationship, never finding stable ground beneath his feet. Beyond her children, she worried about everything else. The economy, politics, violence on the news every evening, neighbors who didn't wave back when she greeted them. Worry had become her full-time occupation, more exhausting than teaching ever was. Every night, her mind raced with anxious thoughts that refused to quiet. Every morning, she woke feeling completely drained, as though she hadn't slept at all. Her doctor prescribed sleeping pills. They made her foggy and disconnected. Her pastor suggested more prayer and faith. It helped briefly, then the worry returned. Her friends told her to just relax. She wanted to scream at their impossible advice. "Don't you think I would if I could?" Everything changed because of a simple cup of tea. Margaret's neighbor was a quiet Vietnamese woman in her 80s named Mrs. Nguyen. They had lived next door for 15 years but rarely spoke beyond polite waves across the fence. Mrs. Nguyen spent her days tending a magnificent garden that bloomed with colors and flowers Margaret couldn't even name. One gray September afternoon, Margaret sat on her porch crying. Not because anything specific had happened. No terrible phone call. No new crisis. The tears simply came, years of accumulated exhaustion finally demanding release. She didn't hear Mrs. Nguyen's soft approach until the old woman's gentle voice came from the fence. "Tea?" she asked simply, holding up a delicate cup with fragrant steam rising. Margaret, too tired and surprised to refuse, nodded through her tears. Minutes later, they sat together on Mrs. Nguyen's small porch, surrounded by flowers of every imaginable color. The tea was warm, fragrant with jasmine, somehow deeply comforting. For a long, peaceful stretch, neither woman spoke. Then, as though an internal dam had broken, Margaret began pouring out everything. David and his workaholism. Karen and her struggling marriage. Michael and his endless wandering. The grandchildren she couldn't protect. The world is falling apart. The worry that never, ever stopped. Mrs. Nguyen listened without interruption, her weathered face holding no judgment, only gentle, patient compassion. When Margaret finally fell silent, exhausted and embarrassed, the old woman spoke softly. "You love them very much." "Of course I do. That's why I worry constantly." Mrs. Nguyen tilted her head slightly. "Is it truly love? Or is it fear wearing the mask of love?" Margaret frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "In my Buddhist tradition, we have an ancient saying, 'The hand that grips too tightly crushes the butterfly it wishes to protect.' You believe your worry somehow keeps your children safe. But tell me honestly, has it ever worked? Has even one worried thought prevented even one of their problems?" Margaret opened her mouth to respond. Closed it. Opened it again. Because the uncomfortable, undeniable truth was no. All her worrying had changed absolutely nothing about her children's lives. But it had certainly destroyed her own peace. Mrs. Nguyen gestured toward her magnificent garden. "You see these flowers? I plant seeds carefully. I water them faithfully each morning. I ensure they have proper sunlight. This is my part, and I do it with love. But then I let go completely. I do not command them to bloom on my schedule. I do not lie awake wondering if they will grow. I trust the process of life. And they bloom, in their own time, in their own way." She turned to face Margaret directly. "Your children are not flowers, but the principle remains the same. You have planted good seeds in them through decades of love. Your part is mostly complete. Now your work is different. Now your work is to trust. To release them to their own paths. To find peace in your own heart, regardless of their choices." That conversation planted a new seed in Margaret, a seed of possibility. Over the following weeks and months, she began to practice. When worry arose, she would pause, take 3 slow breaths, and whisper, "I have done my part. I released the rest with love." At first, the worry returned within seconds. Old habits have deep roots. That was okay. She practiced again without judgment. And again. Gradually, so gradually she almost didn't notice, something shifted. The chronic tightness in her chest began to loosen. Sleep came more easily and lasted longer. She started noticing beautiful things she had ignored for years: autumn leaves against blue sky, birds singing at dawn, the simple pleasure of a good book. And here is the remarkable part: when Margaret changed internally, her relationships changed externally. Not because David worked less or Karen's marriage healed, or Michael found direction. Their circumstances remained largely the same. But because Margaret showed up completely differently. Phone calls that had been tense with unspoken anxiety became lighter and enjoyable. Visits that had felt heavy became relaxed and genuinely joyful. Her children noticed. They couldn't articulate what was different, but they felt it clearly. "Mom," David said one Sunday, "you seem different lately. More peaceful. It's really nice to see." Margaret smiled warmly. "I learned to set down a very heavy stone I'd been carrying too long." If these words are resonating somewhere deep in your heart, if you recognize yourself in Wei Lin's guilt or Margaret's worry, then perhaps this message found you at exactly the right moment. Buddha Coha is a sanctuary for those seeking peace in a chaotic world. Here, we explore ancient Buddhist wisdom in gentle, practical ways that heal and transform. If this speaks to you, please subscribe to Buddha Coha and tap the notification bell. That way, you'll receive each new message of peace and wisdom. Now, let us continue deeper into this teaching. Part 3, The Teaching, Why Letting Go Works. Understanding the Buddhist philosophy behind surrender. Why does letting go actually work so powerfully? There are profound reasons rooted in Buddhist wisdom. First, worry is resistance to reality, and resistance creates suffering. When we worry, we mentally argue with what is, or with what might be. We declare to the universe, "This is not acceptable. This must change according to my wishes." But as the Buddha taught clearly, suffering arises from resistance to life as it unfolds. Peace arises from acceptance of the present moment exactly as it is. This does not mean approving of everything that happens. It does not mean abandoning effort for positive change. It means stopping the exhausting internal war. It means no longer fighting shadows and phantom disasters that may never materialize. Buddhist teaching says, pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Worry is the optional suffering we unnecessarily add to life's natural challenges. Second, the universe responds to your energy, not merely your wishes. This is subtle but crucial. Life does not give you what you desperately want. It gives you experiences that match what you genuinely are. When you radiate fear and chronic anxiety, you attract circumstances mirroring those frequencies. You make poor decisions based on fear. You push away opportunities without realizing. You exhaust yourself before challenges even arrive. But when you radiate peace and trust, everything shifts dramatically. You notice opportunities you would have missed. You respond to difficulties with clarity instead of panic. You attract people and situations aligned with your calm energy. This is karma in action, not as punishment, but as natural cause and effect. Third, letting go is not passive, it is powerfully active. Many misunderstand surrender. They think it means giving up, becoming lazy, abandoning responsibility. The exact opposite is true. Letting go means doing your part fully and excellently, then releasing attachment to specific results. It is the difference between a clenched fist and an open hand. The clenched fist grasps desperately, controls exhaustingly, and wears itself out. The open hand acts with presence, offers with love, then trusts with peace. The Buddha taught the middle way, neither grasping frantically nor avoiding entirely, but walking peacefully between all extremes. Part 4. 3 Sacred Practices for Releasing Worry. Buddhist Techniques to Find Peace in Daily Life. Here are 3 practical techniques to carry with you each day. Practice 1. Observe without reacting. When worry arises, don't fight it. Don't feed it. Simply observe with gentle curiosity. Say silently, "There is a worried thought. I see it. I acknowledge it." This creates essential space. You realize a profound truth: I am not the worry itself. I am the vast awareness peacefully watching the worry arise and pass. In that space, thoughts naturally lose their power. They fade like clouds crossing an empty sky, leaving no trace. You are not the clouds. You are the sky, vast, unchanging, eternally at peace. Practice 2. Breathe to signal safety. Worry triggers your body's ancient stress response. Your heart races. Your muscles tense. Your breathing becomes shallow and rapid. To reverse this cascade, use conscious breathing. Inhale slowly through your nose for 4 counts. Hold gently for 4 counts. Exhale slowly through your mouth for 6 counts. Repeat 3 or 4 times. This activates your body's natural relaxation response. It sends a clear signal: we are safe. There is no danger. We can rest. When the body calms, the mind naturally follows. Practice 3. Act with love, release with trust. Do what you genuinely can, fully, presently, lovingly. Then consciously stop. Say with conviction, "I have planted my seed with care. I release it to the soil of life." Don't dig it up to check if it's growing. Don't replay your actions endlessly. Don't imagine disasters that haven't happened. Simply trust. Wait with patience. Breathe with peace. This is genuine faith, not demanding specific outcomes, but trusting life's unfolding wisdom. Part 5. Words of Wisdom. Buddhist quotes to carry in your heart. The Buddha said, "You only lose what you cling to." When we hold with open hands, there is nothing to lose, only gifts to appreciate while they remain. Zen teaching. Holding on to worry is like carrying an umbrella waiting for rain that may never come, while missing the sunshine all around you. We burden ourselves preparing for storms that exist only in imagination. The Buddha said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." If we wait for external perfection before allowing internal peace, we wait forever. Zen proverb. Let go, or be dragged. We always face this choice: release and walk freely, or grip and be pulled through unnecessary suffering. The Buddha said, "The root of suffering is attachment, and the root of peace is letting go." Closing. The day everything changes. Dear friend, we have traveled far together today. From ancient Chinese mountains to modern American porches. From heavy stones held too long to gardens blooming with patient trust. From exhausting worry to liberating peace. Here is what I hope you carry with you. The day you stop worrying is not a single dramatic day marked on any calendar. It is every moment you choose peace over fear. Every breath you choose trust over control. Every time you gently, with compassion for yourself, set down the heavy stone. You do not need to be perfect at this practice. You only need to begin exactly where you are. One thought at a time. One breath at a time. One small release at a time. And slowly, like sunrise warming frozen ground after a long winter, peace will fill all the spaces where worry once lived. Imagine your life 1 year from now if you truly practice this teaching. Imagine waking each morning without that familiar heaviness pressing on your chest. Imagine moving through your day with calm confidence instead of anxious anticipation. Imagine your relationships lighter, freer, more genuinely joyful. Imagine yourself, peaceful, present, at home in your own heart at last. This is not fantasy or wishful thinking. This is your birthright. This is what becomes possible when you stop gripping life and start flowing with its current. The Buddha spoke these words before his passing: work out your own liberation with diligence. This path is yours to walk. No one can walk it for you. But you are never alone. The teachings are here, waiting. The practices are here, ready. This community is here, walking beside you. And the peace you seek is already within. It always has been, patiently waiting to be remembered and reclaimed. Thank you for walking this path with me today. If this teaching touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs these words. Someone is carrying their own heavy stone. Someone who has forgotten they can set it down. And if you haven't subscribed to Buddha Coha, I warmly invite you to do so now. Click subscribe, tap the notification bell, and join this community of seekers finding peace together. Until we meet again, may you be peaceful. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. And may you know, deep in your heart, that you always have permission to set down the stone. It was never yours to carry. Namo Buddhaya.